Tensions are rising, meanwhile, in the Taiwan Strait. Overnight, Taiwan's defense ministry said that it had to warn off another 19 Chinese aircraft entering its air defense zone. This action is just the latest in China's flexing its military muscle toward Taiwan as Taiwan seeks entry into the Pacific Trade Pact, hoping it make it in before China does. Joining me right now is Fox News senior strategic analyst, General Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure to see you. I was quite concerned when I saw the news that for a second time in a week, we see these Chinese aircraft entering Taiwan. What is your reaction to it?
Well, we know for a fact that this has been going on for well over a year, Maria. But and certainly we also have seen since the Afghanistan collapse, China has increased its rhetoric, certainly, in terms of intimidating, coercing Taiwan and making emphasis that the United States has walked away from a 20-year ally fighting side by side in Afghanistan and surrendered the country to a terrorist organization, the Taliban. So that has been pounding, certainly, inside of Taiwan. But these two incursions, I think, one is a result of the Afghanistan collapse. The second, though, I think has to do with the Quad. The Quad is an informal alliance that began in the Bush administration, revised by the Trump administration. President Biden has had one meeting with them on Zoom, and he's having a physical meeting with them tomorrow for the first time. And this is a good thing. The Quad is Japan, Australia, India, and the United States. 3 of the 4 largest economies in the world have joined together in an informal alliance to make sure the Indo-Pacific stays stable and secure. There's other things that they do in terms of climate change and certainly COVID vaccine distribution as well. But the centerpiece of this is really China. And the fact that they're all coming together certainly is getting to the People's Republic of China for sure here. And I think that the latest incursion is probably dealing with that, to put the pressure on the allies in the region and also to put the pressure on Taiwan.
Even as China is waiting in the wings to have more of a role in Afghanistan, I mean, longer term, General, what does all of this mean? Do you think China will ultimately take over the Bagram Air Base, which was a huge mistake of this administration to let it go, given how fortified and strategically located it is right now? What is your take on how this is developing?
Well, certainly China, I think, in addition to Pakistan, will be the #1 beneficiary of the Afghanistan collapse. I mean, China already has mineral rights for copper inside of Afghanistan, but they haven't been able to access due to the conflict that's been taking place. And so our audience understands Afghanistan, despite its obviously impoverished situation with its people, is rich in mineral rights, particularly in terms of copper, uranium, lithium, and gold. And none of that really has been mined whatsoever. So China is eyeing some of that, to be sure. And I think they'll be one of the countries that will provide economic assistance to the Taliban regime in a significant way to gain access, certainly, and influence, is because that is what their economic influence is all about. It's about geopolitical influence, and that's what they want over Central Asia. They are absolutely thrilled that the United States is out of Central Asia and South Asia. We have given up 7 military bases and multiple CIA bases. As to Bagram, I think that's a complicated question, whether they want Bagram or not. Certainly, on the surface of it, it does. But it also means that they would be subject to ISIS attacks and possibly other terrorist attacks. And whether they want to take that on or not remains to be seen. I think they'll move economically into Afghanistan much more so than they would militarily.
You know, somebody, a source in Washington the other day said to me that once China is in charge of all of those rare earth minerals in Afghanistan that you're talking about, that creates a potential to really back up our auto production, because these rare earth minerals are used for many parts in vehicle development. Lithium and other rare earth minerals. So you wonder if that has a major economic impact on America. I know this is probably going to be one of the topics next week. Congress is going to have a chance to grill General Mark Milley. General Milley will join Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin next week, and he'll testify about the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, the Taliban's swift takeover of the country. What are you expecting? Are we going to finally get some answers here in terms of this no-plan plan to cut and run out of Afghanistan when these two gentlemen are in testimony next week?
Yeah, well, certainly the senators and the congressmen have a lot of questions here to ask, and I think they're going to revolve around, one, the withdrawal decision itself. It's been certainly reported widely that Secretary Austin and also General Milley opposed the withdrawal. I think they're going to want to confirm that. Number two, in agreeing to the withdrawal on a date certain, were there any contingency plans that if the government and the military in Afghanistan began to collapse more rapidly than anticipated, were you going to stop the withdrawal? Why did you continue the withdrawal when the country seemed to be imploding? I think also it's also reported, Maria, that the Pentagon wanted to start the evacuation in May. And I think they'll be pursued on that issue. Did you make that recommendation? You're going to use Bagram Air Base. Certainly. Why was that recommendation turned down? And what about Bagram Air Base? Why did we close it? Why didn't we keep it open? Those questions are going to be probed. And then finally, the evacuation itself. Could we have secured the airport any better than what we did and prevented the loss of our 13 servicemen and the other civilians that were killed there? And what about the date certain? We knew we could not get all of our people out by 31 August. The Taliban were opposing it, and just the sheer scale and size of that evacuation denied us that. Why didn't we keep it open for another week, for another month? What was your recommendation? It's been reported that the Pentagon did agree with keeping the date certain. In other words, evacuate 31 August and leave American citizens behind. I think they're going to have to answer all of those questions, and I'm confident they will.
General, real quick, let me end where I began, and that was Taiwan. The Beijing Olympics are in February 2022, now just a few months away. Would you expect Beijing to move into Taiwan right after the Olympics?
No, I don't see that as that near a term an issue. Certainly they would never do it before that. But I think the intimidation and coercion is going to continue. Yeah.
Okay. All right. General, good to see you. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon. General Jack Keane.
Great talking to you,
We'll be
Maria.
right back.